We have 9 now.
One more. I'm hoping we can get a quorum very soon. Need one more person. Well, I don't want to keep everybody waiting. So, Jerry, would you mind doing the roll call and we'll get started?
Sure.
Thank you.
Del T,
Here.
Steve Chesler,
Here.
Aaron Drinkwater.
Here.
Aaron's here?
Yeah, so maybe we have 10.
Okay, so you have
We
the
quorum.
quorum. I didn't see you on the screen, Aaron. Moisha Indig, Ozina Kaminsky, Abraham Leibovitz, Sante Maselli, Rabbi Griedemann, Isaac Sofer, Robert Solano,
I know he's here.
Here.
Steve Weidberg,
Here.
William Vega,
Here.
Michael Andrews,
Here.
Keith Berger,
Here.
Corey Canton,
Here.
okay, Michael Kowachka,
Here.
Kate Naplatarski, Allison Stone.
Here. Okay, great.
You have 13 members present.
Thank you.
Excuse me a second. Did you hear me?
Rabbi?
Yes.
Yes, Rabbi.
Yes, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Also, Trina's name was not called.
I'm well aware of that. As of the current moment, there are several people that are not members of this board because I have not received appointment notification from Borough Hall. Ms. McKeever is one of them.
I just want to thank those of you who didn't have your reappointment sent in yet, but are still coming to the meeting anyway. Thank you. That includes Trina. All right. Why don't we get started with the first item? We have 4 items. The first item is 307 Pence Avenue. So who's going to be presenting?
I am. Good evening. I'm Judy Gallant from Brian Cave, Leighton Paper, the Land Use Council for 307 Kent Associates. Louis Silverman and Lily Blank, the owners of the property, will briefly introduce themselves, and then I'll come back and go through the application that's before you. Louis?
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everybody. My name is Louis Silverman. I'm a partner in 307 Kent Associates. Just give you a little history. I think you guys have heard this before, but my family and I have operated a business in the past on Kent Avenue since 1961. Currently, we still are stakeholders in some small businesses that still exist in Williamsburg today. I've been in the real estate business for almost 30 years, owning and operating real estate in Williamsburg and the boroughs. As we all understand, the area has changed quite a bit. From my past, it was a lot of heavy industrial users and businesses, and today it's almost majority more residential use than anything else. We plan to rezone this building to accommodate a mixed-use office building, which will be able to accommodate some medical office use along with light manufacturing and retail. We believe that this will be an amenity to the area, and one of the main reasons is that today people are choosing to live, work, and play where they live. COVID, yes, I understand, has rocked our worlds completely, and it continues to change the way people work. And we believe that the office space itself is not dead. It's just being reimagined. And once again, this will be an amenity for the area. Want to turn to Lily now for an introduction.
Hi, my name's Lily Blank. I'm Lewis's partner in 307 Kent. I'm actually a psychologist, therapist. Is what I do on Zoom all the time in the past year, unfortunately. I'm Lewis's partner because my dad ran a wholesale distributing business out of 307 Kent from the mid-'60s through the late '80s, and he rented his trucks from Lewis's dad's trucking company. He had an opportunity to purchase the building, which he did with Lewis's dad. I grew up coming to Kent Avenue. I remember when Domino and Schaefer were working factories and the street smelled of beer. The neighborhood's changed a lot since then. After my dad retired, City Meals on Wheels was our tenant for many years, and they were fabulous tenants, and we had a great working partnership with them. But then they came to us a number of years ago, right before we sort of began the rezoning, to tell us that they weren't going to renew their lease, that they didn't feel that the kind of trucking business that my dad had run before them and they were running was really viable anymore along Kent Avenue. That was when we started to think about, ways to create a space that would go with the change in the neighborhood that we could feel good about. And I do feel good about this building. Like I said, I think people are dying to go to work, back to offices, and I think, at least in a hybrid way at least. And I think this is a good reimagining office space. And now I'm going to hand it to Judy, who's going to talk more about our project. Thanks.
Hello, Dell.
Yes?
Simon. Hello, Mom.
Oh, good. Thank you, Simon.
Okay.
Judy, I think you're mute.
Okay, sorry, I'll do that again. Now I will share my screen and speak at the same time. Tricky. Sorry, just bear with me. I'm sorry. I lost the.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. So this is an application to rezone 307 Kent Avenue to facilitate, as Lewis said, the construction of a 9-story building that would accommodate office, retail, light manufacturing, and community facility uses. The rezoning area is bounded by, it's located on the western portion of the block, bounded by Kent on the west, Wythe on the east, South 2nd on the north, and South 3rd on the south. This aerial photo shows the site in its context. It's located at the corner of South 3rd and Kent Avenue, and it's surrounded by Domino buildings and the Domino Park to the west, northwest, and southwest, and the Williamsburg Bridge to the south, and Grand Ferry Park to the north. The site is a 14,425 square foot lot that's currently developed with this single-story building that's occupied by a warehouse and production event space. The application proposes to rezone the site from an M31, which is a heavy industrial district, to an M15, which is a light industrial district, because as people have mentioned, the neighborhood around the site has changed from a manufacturing area to one that is increasingly residential, and the M3 district is no longer appropriate, as you'll see from some of the following slides. Here are existing slides. As you can see from the photo on the left, to the west of the site, across Kent Avenue, is the Domino Refinery building, which is part of the 5-block Domino campus that was rezoned in 2010 from an M31 district, and the refinery building is being enlarged and converted to office use. To the south, across the street from the site, is the Domino Upland building, which is a 15-story residential building with ground floor retail, shown here in the photo on the right. On the left is another view of the Domino Upland building at 325 Kent, zoomed out, which is just south of the site. Across Kent Avenue, 280 Kent, which is then shown as between the refinery and this building, which in the photo is under construction, but today is fully done. 280 Kent will contain 680 dwelling units, a new elementary school, as well as parking. And then further north is another Domino building, 260 Kent, a mixed-use project that consists of 2 towers with 332 dwelling units, commercial space, and retail. In total, Domino will contain something like 2,300 dwelling units and 480,000 square feet of commercial space, really transforming this area from a heavy manufacturing district to a mixed-use community. In addition to the Domino residential buildings to the west, there's also residential use adjacent to 307 Kent to the east and on the balance of the project block, much of which is already zoned to permit residential use. It's in an MX district, which permits residential use. Shown here is the residential building on South 3rd Street, which was developed in pursuant to a 2003 zoning variance to allow residential use in what was then the M3 zone. This area map illustrates the mixed-use nature of the neighborhood today, which continues to move away from its heavy manufacturing past. The prevalent red, yellow, and peach are commercial, residential, and mixed-use buildings, and the less prevalent purple is industrial use. And of course, this large purple area to the west is the Domino factory, which is no longer in manufacturing use and will be redeveloped. Here are side-by-side slides of the existing and the proposed zoning on the right. As you can see, the M31 district, shown in peach here, is currently limited to portions of 3 blocks extending from South 3rd on the south to Grand Street on the north. And the size of this district has really been reduced over time as a result of multiple rezonings in 2005 and again in 2011. So that today, the remnants of the district, including 307 Kent, which is shown here, outlined in red as the rezoning area, those remnants are entirely surrounded by districts that permit residential use as of right. And the site's current M3 zoning is intended for heavy industrial uses that generate noise, traffic, pollutants, and other externalities. And these districts are intended to be and are generally located at a distance from residential use on the theory that those uses in an M3 would not be compatible with residential use. The maximum FAR in an M3 is 2 for permitted manufacturing and commercial uses, and community facilities is just one very limited exception, and residential uses are not permitted at all in the M3 district. This is a close-up of the rezoning area. The rezoning would consist of 5 lots and 2 partial lots. Lot 1, which is the 307 Kent site, like Lot 6 and Lot 10, as well as small portions of Lots 7501 and 7502, would be rezoned to an M15 district that would extend 120 feet from Kent Avenue. It would also include a 90-foot westward extension of the existing special mixed-use district found on the eastern end of the block to meet the proposed M15 district, and would encompass most of Lots 7501 and 7502, which are currently in residential use. It would also map on mandatory inclusionary housing area over the portion of the block that would be added to the MX district, which is required by city policy. So here you can see the bulk parameters of the M15 district. The proposed district is, as I said, a light manufacturing district that permits only industrial uses that meet very strict performance standards, as well as office and retail uses, limited community facility uses such as medical offices. The maximum FAR for commercial and manufacturing uses is 5, and the maximum FAR for community facility uses is 6.5, and the maximum total FAR for a building that also contains community facilities is 6.5. The maximum street wall height is 85 feet, after which the building must set back on a narrow street like Kent and South 3rd, has to set back 20 feet, and then it can rise under a sky exposure plane of 2.7 to 1. Here you can see, this is an illustrative rendering of the 9-story, approximately 6.5 FAR building that could be constructed under the proposed rezoning. It could contain up to 93,000 square feet of floor area, consisting of approximately 63,500 square feet of office and light industrial uses, up to 21,500 square feet of community facility use, which would be medical office, and approximately 8,000 square feet of ground floor retail. The base would set back 5 feet at the property line on Kent Avenue to provide a sidewalk widening area for enhanced pedestrian circulation. It would then rise 5 stories and 85 feet above the street line, set back another 20 feet from Kent Avenue and 25 feet on South 3rd, and rise to a total height of 151 feet. There would be an outdoor terrace at the 6th floor to be used by tenants for passive recreation. The design intent would have high ceilings to accommodate light industrial users. Only 12 bicycle parking spaces are required, but 62 are planned for the cellar because the theory is that this would be a local office use in which people would walk or ride a bike to work, creating sort of a local economy. There would be 1 loading berth accessed on South 3rd Street. That's not required, but in order to accommodate light manufacturing, it is being planned. Here is a bulk context study. The M15 would mediate between the Domino high-rise buildings to the west and south of the site and the lower buildings that adjoin the rezoning to the east and the north. The 150-foot-high proposed height would be lower than several nearby buildings, including 325 Kent to the south, which is a Domino building, 321 Wyeth, and all of the Domino buildings on the waterfront, and it would be similar in height to the Esquire shoe polish factory at 330 Wyeth. So this figure shows existing buildings in white, those under construction or approved but not yet under construction in pink, on the proposed building you can see here in blue. So directly across the street from the proposed building is the refinery building, which is going to be enlarged to 200 feet. Today it's about 155 feet. Across South 3rd is 325 Kent, which is 170 feet tall. And other buildings in the Domino development will range from 365 feet to this one, 280, is proposed to be 530 feet tall. To the east, 321 Wyeth is a 210 foot tall residential building. And then the Esquire shoe polish building is 147 feet tall. It was converted to residential use in 2000. We believe that the proposed rezoning offers a number of benefits. It would bring office, community facility, and retail uses that would support the growing residential development around it and be more consistent with that residential use than the uses that are permitted under M31, which are the heaviest and most noxious industrial uses that are allowed. It would also require any industrial uses to meet very high performance standards that would be consistent with the emerging mixed-use character, and particularly with residential use, much more so than the M3 district, which doesn't have such performance standards. And it would result in uses that would activate the street and enhance the site's engagement with the surrounding area. Today, it is essentially a black wall with no street engagement, blank wall. It's also black. With no street engagement, and it would bring jobs to the area that would enhance the local economy and provide opportunities for residents to work near where they live, as well as tax revenues. James Bright, the project manager for the development, will wrap things up.
Thanks, Judy.
James?
Can you hear me? Yeah, great. I'll keep it brief. I want to introduce myself. I'm James Bright, project manager for 307 Kent Associates. Judy, everyone did a great job. Only thing I'll add is throughout this process, as we continue forward, we have met, spoken with informally with different stakeholders in the community. We've received, solicited, and digested lots of feedback, comments, support, questions from various community members. So we'll continue to do that. As a part of that, several members of the community have submitted their support in various forms, verbally and or written. We have a few letters that were submitted to the community board, sent via email. I just want to highlight them here. I will not, in the interest of time, I will not read the entire letter. I just want to highlight those who chose to send a letter to the community board. No extensive list, but just a handful that have. So Kate Davies is a owner of a yoga studio. We have a couple restaurants and other owners, and Andrew Tarlow and Zach Weiner, and a gentleman by Mo Hadar, who's a resident in the community in Williamsburg. So that's not an entire list, and I know there are others, but just want to highlight those that have submitted letters of support for the project. And I think that concludes our presentation. So I'm going to turn it over, and we're happy to answer questions and receive feedback.
I have just one question to go back to right now. How many bike spaces did you say that you were going to provide?
12 are required, but 62 are planned.
62 planned. Okay.
62, yeah, 5 times essentially. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions? I have some, but let some people ask questions if you have any.
My name's Angelo Cavallo. I think it'll all be good for the neighborhood.
Do any members from the land use committee have any questions?
Yes, Del, I do. Steve.
Okay, Steve.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. Regarding, office versus light manufacturing, do you have plans to lease to light manufacturing tenants? Like, do you have like a certain percentage in mind to bring them in just to keep the, keep things diverse in terms of businesses and companies, and not for the building, but for the neighborhood as well in terms of the labor market?
So, thanks, Steve. The short answer is yes. As far as a specific percentage, that would be too difficult to tell you now, given that the building is to be developed. But the short answer is part of the reason we're pursuing this rezoning is that it has that option for the light manufacturing. So we believe there is demand, and we know those tenants exist, and we hope to accommodate them.
But I understand, though, unlike, I guess, a project like 25 Kent, you really have no legal obligation to provide a certain percentage of light manufacturing. So just, is there some way that could be incentivized?
You're right. There, under the rezoning, there would not be any. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback. There wouldn't be a legal obligation, as there would be in 25 Kent. In 25 Kent, the zoning district had a bump between permitted commercial manufacturing and community facility uses, and so what happened there was city planning created a special permit to essentially exploit that differential to encourage manufacturing use. The M3 district that we were in that doesn't work because there is no community facility, there's no bump. It was 2 for all uses, so that didn't work. We discussed this at length with city planning. They felt that the M15 was appropriate. So Obviously, the building has been, maybe not obviously, sorry, but the building is, the design intent of the building is such that it would accommodate light industrial users with high ceilings and for their equipment. And we're putting in a loading dock to accommodate them, which is not required. But I guess Louis and James can speak to this more. It will depend on what the market will bear.
I have something I'd like to add to what Steve just brought up. And that is that, as you may know, recently in Long Island City, the city allowed for development that was not in an IBZ to use the tool of an M14, and I think even with a special permit, which is pretty much like what happened with 25 Kent. So it's my sense that the city might be loosening up to look at the possibility of using the M14 rezoning, and with a special permit, of course, that would provide for the requirement of some light industrial of 20%, I think. I think that I know that I also have concern, and a number of members of the committee have voiced concern about the fact that this zoning does not have a requirement for manufacturing or industrial. And I guess as Steve is wondering, I'm wondering if we could have a condition that there would be some binding agreement to provide some light manufacturing, some industrial. I don't know how other members of the committee feel about this.
Can I speak, Del? And
sure.
Okay. Yes, I agree with that.
This is Katie, by the way, Katie Napolcharski.
I agree with that what Del just said. And then I have some other questions, but I don't know if you're finished, Del, or not.
I am. That's my main concern is
okay.
That, you know, we've found in the past that when we go along with the developers' promise to give a community space, they don't always make good on that. Now, I'm not trying to impugn any you know, bad intentions by these people before us, by this developer, but I think it would really be a nice security if we knew that the developer would agree to a binding agreement to provide a certain amount of light industry manufacturing.
And
anyway,
Del,
Katie, please continue. Yeah.
Del, it's Trina, and I know that at 25 Kent, it was the market rate office was subsidizing the manufacturing, so it was offered at less than market rate. It was offered, the manufacturing was at a more affordable rate.
Yes.
And so we'd want that as well.
Yes.
So I agree with that, and I'm wondering in terms of binding agreement, whether it can be put into a restrictive declaration. I think that's what it's called.
Yes, I was going to suggest that. Yes.
Okay. I think that it is very important because that really makes for mixed use. Having only office does not make for mixed use space. And our artisans are very important people within our communities now and historically. I also like to say a community facility, I'm wondering if medical office is the only possibility for that and for use as the community space. And if you're going to put in I don't know if Del asked this, a binding agreement for that, because there's empty community space at the Dale Hotel. And then I also would like to know about the cost of the office space, because as I understand, most of 25 Kent is vacant, and that they're waiting for high, their priority is the highest rent possible, perhaps it's rather than the best quality or some other factor. So I have those are like 3 questions, I guess I have there.
Can I answer at least the first one?
Thanks.
Sure.
With respect to the possible community facility uses that are permitted under the proposed M15, M15 permits very limited community facility uses. In fact, it's only medical office and houses of worship. Of the two, it seems to developers that based on the amount of residential development that's going on, that's already present and that is planned in the Domino buildings, community facility use of medical office is one that might well be in demand given the number of residences. The whole point of community facility uses as designated in the zoning resolution is that they are uses that are considered to be necessary to facilitate residential use. So houses of worship, schools, medical offices. So of the two that are allowed, that is the one that seemed most appropriate. And I shouldn't speak for the developer, and the developer will, I'm sure, speak for himself now. But if the market doesn't prove that to be right, they won't build that space. They don't want to build empty space. There's really no benefit to building empty space. So, but I'll let Louis take care of that.
So what are you saying the choices are? A medical office or what else?
House of worship.
Those are the only options?
Correct. Yep.
Something I'll add, it's difficult to make exact comparisons, but just some attributes of our project are that it's a smaller building with smaller footprints, which we believe can accommodate these small distance. I think we're referring to that can take a portion of the floor, and we would like the option to grow into more space. So we intend to accommodate those types of users.
So your objective is not the next Amazon, for example. I have to ask. I mean,
No, the building is too small. It's best suited for small businesses of all different types, and it's really hard as when you're putting a building like this together. You can't pre-lease a building like this. This building has to be built and marketed to who's there and local tenants. And we believe that, due to COVID, we really believe that there's going to be a very large demand going forward, where people they're going to open smaller offices of all different types, whether it's, I could be a maker of alcohol, small brand from Brooklyn that wants to open up, somebody who's doing some very light, today's version of light manufacturing is quite different than what we knew it before in the neighborhood. It was heavy manufacturing, and it's a loosely used term. And the problem with putting, we originally, when we did this, as Judy mentioned, our goal was we went to city planning. We spent a lot of time trying to solve issues for the neighborhood and to understand what would make sense here. This is not something that we did haphazardly. And they were not incorrect. I think that this made the most sense for what it is and where it is. So it is very hard. There are different types of smaller manufacturers that work here. We met with the name escaped. We met with so many people. Evergreen, which was super. It was super, and we spent time with them, and they did agree, and they said there's needs, and we understand the challenges, and they need small space, and they were all for it. They also understand that it is not a big building, so it's not going to make that kind of impact as much as we would like it to be, but it's a decent sized building. But you can't compare, the ability to build 100,000 square feet to somebody who has over 500,000 square feet and was given that, because of something. For us, if there's no, we have the ability to build for medical if it exists. If it doesn't exist, then, for sure, we're not going to build something that doesn't exist or there's no need. And we'll understand that obviously before. But at a 70,000 square foot building, there's going to be small manufacturers that will definitely come, a jewelry maker, we just don't know, to be honest with you. We just know that there's going to be a huge need for people to have, people are leaving different parts of the city, different parts of the boroughs. They're going to have, offices that these may be offshoots of small companies that people that their workforce lives in, Williamsburg, and people are going to have a small office that they're going to be able to go to a couple of days. As Judy said, flex space. I mean, a lot of this is unknown, but we believe, and we're seeing it. We're reading it. We're seeing it. And Williamsburg has changed, and there's a lot of people there that would love the opportunity to have some office space that they can bike and work to work, and obviously some manufacturing of some nature. But I can't tell you I know exactly who that's going to be. I mean, we have an idea, but everything is evolving, as everyone can see.
The sense I have from people I've been speaking to, from the comments people made at the full board meeting and tonight, is that the only concern that we have is the desire to have some kind of a commitment so that we can be we can feel more secure that there will be at least some amount of space given to light manufacturing or light industry. Do we want to are we ready to vote on this?
Well, I think there were just people in the community who wanted to make comments, I thought.
Oh, are there? Okay, if I didn't know. Okay, sure.
I thought one person tried to
I
speak.
can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Right.
So
Hi,
who
I'm
wants to
Maureen
speak
Bowler.
now?
Hello?
Hello, is this Maureen Bowler?
Yes, it is. My big concern with whether it's industrial or whether it's residential is the buildings that have already been built by Two Trees are underutilized. There probably a third of the buildings are empty right now, and I'm a little concerned that you're going to continue to build buildings and the interest isn't necessarily to put people in them. Your 2-bedroom, 2 bathrooms are $8,000 a month. That's pretty much, that's an amount of money that most families cannot afford. And they're too small. So, the apartments themselves, especially with the pandemic, if we find that people do want to live and work in their apartments, your apartments fall short. And then you apparently have other buildings that you're going to build. It's a little, it's a problem. I live very close. I can see your buildings, and I can see a number of buildings that have been built recently, and they're exactly in the same boat.
Ms. Fowler, let me interrupt you. You're talking about residential buildings, but this is an application for a commercial industrial building.
Right. I understand that, but my concern is that actually, is that building actually going to be filled? Do they have commitments from companies? It doesn't, if it follows with the residential, if the same kind of history happens, then they're going to be empty buildings too. Does my point make any sense? Anyway, that's my point.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else waiting to say something?
Del, can I ask a question about the community facility? So right
Sure.
now, there's a floor and a half, basically, of the bottom parts of the bigger floors, and it's 22,000 square feet, and you're saying it's for medical. What happens if you can't find medical people that want to go in there at the prices that you're offering? Are you willing to bring the prices down so that the community facility actually gets utilized? Or you said something about if medical doesn't work, you'd try something else, but the other thing would be house of worship. Are you willing to actually fill the community facility space at where there's demand?
So I don't think we would build it if it didn't make sense. We wouldn't build it and first figure it out. In other words, we would go to the market understanding we have the rezoning and we have the ability to do it.
But
And
there are
if-
empty community facilities in Williamsburg.
Yes, I'm sure there are, but we're talking about for medical, and I can't tell you what anyone else is doing, but there is a need for some medical space there. Whether or not we build it, I can't answer that. It's a possibility, but we're not going to build something without having the relevant facts that we can possibly lease it. We wouldn't do it on speculation, that's for sure.
Jerry, do you have any idea what's going on behind the
It's 718880. It's that one.
So that is always a concern. It's one of the reasons why I prefer, why I prefer the M14, because you don't need a community facility for that to get the optimum FAR. You just need to provide some industrial space. And that is a concern. We're finding too many developers are getting the upper FAR because of the promise to provide community space, and then they're not doing it, and it just lays vacant.
I'm sorry, can I just make a point in response to that?
Sure.
The buildings I think that you're referring to were obviously built pre-COVID. This building is designed, given the unfolding of events before us, it's designed to respond to the post-COVID environment. The idea that offices will be smaller, people will want to work near where they live, that communities should be these kind of 15-minute communities where everything you need is within reach and you don't have to commute to Manhattan and get on a train, et cetera. And as Louis said, they're going to really examine the market before they jump in and build space that would be empty. But the idea is that this building, in all of its ways, will be responding to a new environment that we're faced with, and has the opportunity to do that. It's a moment in time when we can actually build something that responds to the current environment. So that should help with some of the mismatch that you're seeing in your neighborhood for buildings that were built before that may not be in sync with current conditions.
But what kind of agreement would you be willing to give us so that has some teeth to it, so that you're saying you won't build it? I'm presuming what you mean is if you don't see that you'll be able to market it, then you will make do with a lower FAR. Is that what you're saying?
Louis, can you respond to that, please?
If you're saying you won't build the community.
Yes, you're correct. The bump is 1.5.
Right.
And as part of the rezoning, we have to show what the maximum we could do. So that's why this is not something that we know for sure that we will do, and we won't do it unless we believe we can get a tenant. A medical user is somebody that's going to take their time wanting to be there, whether it's, a hospital wanting to have, you got to remember, it's roughly, I forget the math, but call it 15,000 square feet of contiguous office, maybe on two floors, where it's maybe a little bit more than that. And if you're able to present that to a hospital, I don't know about, we would all want some sort of medical office like that can help out. And I'm not talking about just an urgent care. I'm talking it's happening, it's happening in many places just like this. Even in the suburbs, and Williamsburg, I would not consider it a suburb, but it sort of feels more like a suburb of the city, and that's why it's been so popular and continues to grow. And if you see what's going on in COVID, from a real estate perspective, Williamsburg has fared far better. So all this really is for us is it's an amenity if it makes sense that we can find the right tenant for the medical space. We're not going to build something to lay vacant, have the expense of construction, and there's only 2 uses here. So it's just not something that we would do, from an economic perspective. It just doesn't make sense. But because of a rezoning, we must show this as a possibility. And it's very much a real possibility because of what transpired through COVID. There's a need here. And by the way, we might be wrong that there might not be a need and we won't build it. That's really the eventuality of this.
It's Katie. I would just like to say, I think that sounds like a good plan. However, we do know that this has happened around the city, that community facilities are built and they are vacant. So I think that there's no harm done to have a binding agreement of some sort, and that we, as a board, and make sure that there's some sort of binding agreement if there is that change in the zoning.
Well, Katie, can I say, as that's a zone, they're required to provide X amount of community facility space. I think it's with that light manufacturing, there's no requirement to include any percentage of light manufacturing. They just have the ability to provide it if they want.
Right. I'm just saying that if they do go with the one which has the medical, which I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying that there is a mechanism that makes a requirement to fill that. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I'm not unsure what you're saying.
It does make sense. I will tell you that we're not really sure yet. I think that it's something that has not been exactly worked out, but we are trying to come up with some way that we can have some kind of a binding agreement or some enforcement. I mean, we may want to make approval conditions on the city's committing to enforcing the filling the community facility area, and not allowing it to remain vacant. And we may want to condition any approval on a restricted declaration that would require a certain percentage of industrial use.
Yeah, I would. The only thing I would say to that is, I think, comparing this project to the William Vale, in this project, they're trying to achieve an extra 1.5 of FAR with the community facility.
Right.
And in worst case scenario, they don't rent that out. So they have an extra, essentially they have an extra floor or two, versus William Vale, they got, I guess what it's about 2.8 additional FAR, where they can have their hotel. And so if that bottom section where they're supposed to have community facility tenants is never rented, it's, no big deal. They've gotten what they wanted. Sure, they'd love to get rent for those bottom floors, but so, and yeah, and just like you said, Alex Summer from City Planning has basically said, that tenanting the buildings is not enforceable, that as far as whether it's a community facility or if they're required to have light manufacturing. So, so I don't know.
I think what you're saying, Steve, makes sense in that this is a small building, and so it probably is not in their interest at all to leave a fairly significant space just vacant, just doing nothing for them. for the community facility. And so maybe that's not a really big concern, especially since the city has not been really cooperative with enforcing the tenancy. But on the other hand, I do think that we need to consider asking for some kind of a restrictive declaration so that there would have to be some amount of industry.
I would just say Steve made a great point. What he said is, as we're going to build this building, we're not getting a bonus for building the 1.5 is not a bonus. We have an FAR of, I believe it's what, 5? That's our FAR. So we're not getting any bonus for the 1.5 to build a community facility. There's a very big, this is very different than anything else, because most of these people are building because they got something for it as an additional, what Steve just explained eloquently, that they got a bonus for this. We're not getting a bonus. We would only build it if it was an amenity and something that we believed that we could rent, because otherwise it would make zero economic sense for us. It's too much risk. It's not.
I think you're right, and I think
we just want you to understand that.
I think two of us have just made your argument for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I just think Steve
Val,
said
if I can go next, it'd be great.
Yes, Rob, please.
This is surreal for me, because usually when I hear rezonings, my initial is to resist all rezonings and fight. This is one of the ones that I have been incredibly impressed by long-term owners being conscious of the neighborhood and working with city planning and not trying to drive in a residential rezoning and disregarding city planning and just filing their application. I just wanted to give props where props is due. To have Meals on Wheels as one of your tenants shows a history of trying to make it work and trying to have good tenants. So no skin in the game. Props to you all for being respectful to the neighborhood. Traditionally, M jobs are more tailored to people of color and have higher wages and raises for our community. So just happy to say thank you for being respectful and adding M jobs to the neighborhood and not trying to force in a rezoning where we don't need any more high-end vacant luxury apartments in the waterfront. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree, and I think my sense is that that's a pretty widespread, feeling on the committee. I think the only thing that we might want to discuss here is whether we want to try to satisfy ourselves that there'll be some industrial use, and I don't know. I mean, the committee can make that decision.
Yeah, Del, this is Keith. I just want to echo Rob's comment and yours. I do think this is great. I like the setbacks as well and some of those thoughtful additions when we've got some sidewalks that you can barely get by, 2 people at a time. But I do think we should try to do something around the light industrial just to make sure there's some real skin in the game there. Otherwise, I agree with Rob and Steve on their comments and yours.
Yeah, and also, there's a guy, Brady.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Dollarhide.
Yeah, I just wanted to, my name is Brady Dollarhide. I've lived in Williamsburg and Greenpoint. I live in Greenpoint now, but I lived in Williamsburg for many, many years. I've lived here for 26 years. And I wanted to echo what Rob was saying. I just think it's nice to see owners, taking into consideration what needs to be done in the neighborhood to, to bring office space here. I do think it's something that's missing. So I'm in support of it. I just wanted to say that, and that's it.
Thank you. Does anyone have a thought if we were to ask for some kind of a commitment to an industrial? I would recommend that it be less than the 20% that would be required in the 4 point in the M14.
I would say, after listening to the full arc of this conversation, I mean, initially that was was really strong feeling about trying to bring some sort of requirement into it. But I thought, Katie's question about will these guys bring Amazon in and they'll take over the whole building? That was a really great question. And just hearing their response, I just feel like, I don't know, it feels like it's going to be a flexible space that will be inviting to multiple uses, including light manufacturing and offices. It's just, it seems much smaller, not much, but smaller than like 25 Kent or Acme. But I mean, if folks feel strongly about having a condition, I would support it. But also, I've one more subject to bring up. And I don't, to me, it's not a deal breaker, but I saw it in the environmental impact statement regarding transportation, that this project built out would, impact the bus routes, but there's potential to increase capacity on the B32 and the B62. But they said there are intersections, about half a dozen of them, like on Bedford and Wythe and Kent, which will be problematic. And so my suggestion would be to basically, I don't know, send a message to the board and to the Transportation Committee that needs to continue the study of redesigning our streets in light of that how not to have fewer cars on the streets and enable people to get to work and where they need to. Because we don't want it to inhibit a project like this, that potentially bring jobs to the neighborhood, where, as Rob said, this overwhelming influx of of luxury of apartments. Said we have someone who wants to bring in and work. So I would just recommend that we send a message upstream to the full board. I don't know exactly where the right target would be, but basically to study transportation for the future, so I can accommodate more workers in the neighborhood and obviously more residents as well, in light of there being too many cars.
I don't know if that's something that we can really easily add to this motion.
Yeah, I don't think we should add it to the motion. I was just thinking that it was just something separate. We should just maybe note in our report and just ask that the board and or the Transportation Committee just take note of it. That it's just something that should be really looked at hard and studied.
So does anybody want to make a motion? And first of all,
Del, sorry, I just want to make, before the motion, really quickly comment. Just in terms of having any percentage, just an idea to have a minimal percentage for industrial would be as a precedent, but I don't know if that's important or makes sense. I also want to say, I liked what Rob and Brady said. It's good to hear. And if it is true that this is a quality project, I really appreciate it. And then the last thing, I'd like to just say that this is not an industrial business zone. And I just want to kind of go on record to say this is a different case than somebody coming and asking for this within an industrial business zone. And that in the future, if we get such requests within the industrial business zone, that we see it as a different creature.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I don't know that everybody would agree to that, because we've been asking for some time now to extend some of the tools that were available to the industrial business zones to the manufacturing zones. So I hear what you're saying, but I think many people have felt that 25 Kent should have been broader so that the manufacturing zones could have taken advantage of the special permit. But again, that's something I think reasonable people can disagree on and talk about. But so here's my question. I think it sounds to me like the committee wants to approve this application. The question I have is, do we approve it just outright, or do we approve it with a condition or a request that there be some restrictive condition or declaration to to require some minimal amount of light industry. I don't know if we feel strongly enough to put that on. And I, like to hear some feedback, and then we can vote. So,
Del, I just wanted to add, usually that's great, but I think it just feels like this presentation was solid tonight, where I think a yes or no vote, I think a yes vote, because I do know about that world is very difficult to find a tenant in general, and so they might find a great tenant that feels great, but we've added something and they're not hitting the manufacturing percentage, but they do have a great tenant that could add jobs locally and people live near and work. So I do know that there is some flexibility needed when trying to acquire a tenant. I do think they have a track record of acquiring good tenants, right? And so I think it feels like we could do a little trust the ownership in the team and do a yes vote. I think they heard us tonight. Like, we really would like to have a manufacturing component here, and it's important.
so you want to make that? You want to make the motion that we've?
Yeah, I'm happy to make a motion to support.
Anyone second?
I second it, Steve.
Okay, so let's have a roll call vote. Jerry, if you don't mind.
Del T,
Yes.
Steve Chesler,
Yes.
Erin Drinkwater,
Yes.
Moisha Endig, Bozina Kaminsky, Abraham Leibovitz, Sante Maselli, Rabbi Needleman, Isaac Sofer, Robert Solano,
Yes.
Steve Weidberg,
Yes.
William Vega,
Yes.
Michael Andrews,
Yes.
Keith Berger,
Yes.
Corey Canton,
Yes.
thank you, Michael Kowachka,
Yes.
Katie Naplatarski,
Yes.
Allison Stone,
Yes.
13 in the affirmative.
Okay, thank you.
0 no, 0 abstentions.
All right, make us proud, please.
Just look back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Everyone, thank you. It's
Okay.
David Niederman. I kept on saying yes.
Oh, okay, great. Wonderful.
So noted.
Thank you.
Somehow it doesn't pick up. The phone does not work.
We got you now. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, second item. I don't know if we pronounce it Gary or Jerry Street. So let's move on.
We're not sure either, right? It's also like gerrymandering. I think historically it was Gary, but somehow it's Jerry. So we'll go with Jerry.
Okay.
I'm sorry to Jerry Esposito.
Okay.
I'm going to call it Jerry Street, and if anyone corrects, this will be in your honor, Jerry.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks for having me tonight. My name is David Rosenberg of Sheldon Lobel PC on behalf of Congregation de Vriol of Sumner. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
So to jump to it, we were here a couple of years ago, and I hope to be quick tonight. In 2017, we were here asking for this community board's approval for the building that you see on the left side of the screen over here. It was for a variance to allow a 3-story community facility house of worship building with an additional 4 stories of residential, the residential portion being as of right. The waivers here on this particular project were for rear yard obstructions in the rear yard and lot coverage. The original proposal would have had, and you can see the zoning lot difference on the left, the original variance, you can kind of see it, the line isn't so strong, but lot 49, where the proposed building would be, and the idea at the time was to include lots 46, 47, and 48 next door as part of the zoning lot to allow for additional residential floor area that would have accounted for the top 2 floors. We were, at the time, the proposal in front of the community board was to have a 37-foot wall in the back. We were very grateful for this board's approval at the time. At the BSA process, it was reduced to 30 feet in the back, and it was approved. Now, however, a couple of years later, the ability to merge the zoning lots has fallen apart, and that's no longer a possibility. And so we're back at the BSA for an amendment to the original variance. And this is a little bit weird for me, considering the other times that we've been in front of the board, this board especially, but we're asking for permission to make the building smaller and end up with, instead of the 7-story building that you see on the left, the 5-story building that you see on the right. Just simply because we don't have enough floor area anymore without those additional lots, we don't have the floor area for the 6th and 7th floors. And so the residential portion would remain as of right. The community facility portion would remain as approved by BSA, with some other small changes that you can see here to the layout of the cellar to kind of just flip it around. Instead of the locker rooms in the cell and on the bottom and then it was at the top, it's kind of flipped around with an additional small office space carved in there at the bottom and carved in with some of the extra arrangement of the space. And so we're here in this amendment because what this ends up with as a technical matter is an increase to the degree of lot coverage from the previous variance, where the building with the house of worship was 100% community facility, combined with 3 other buildings on the zoning lot at approximately 65% lot coverage, which ended up with a lot coverage on the zoning lot at about 80%, whereas now it would be a lot coverage of 100%, but the buildings would have the same footprint. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I guess I'd like just some more detail in terms of, if we were to compare this in terms of zoning designation, what the shift is here, if that's a fair comparison. Yeah.
So the zoning designation here is the same R7, I believe it's an R7A district. The zoning district doesn't change. You know, this was originally a BSA variance to allow for the additional piece in the back. So generally, and I can pull this up on the plans here, on a community facility building, you're allowed to have 100% lot coverage up to 23 feet or the level of the first story. Initially, as proposed, when it came before this board 3 years ago, the idea was a 37-foot obstruction in the back because it would have the first floor of the daily prayer rooms and the second and third floor at double height for the main sanctuary. I'm just pulling up this section over here that will show this in a little more detail. And when we went through BSA, that process, we were reduced to 30 feet in the back. And we were able to accommodate that within the initial footprint. So you can see kind of over here on the right side, you see where the hatch marks are. That portion was what we needed the variance for when we were here a few years ago. The rest of it was as of right. But because we needed that portion, it required a rear yard waiver, a waiver for obstructions in the rear yard, and a lot coverage waiver. And now the fact that we're not going to have those other residential buildings as part of the merged zoning lot necessarily increases the lot coverage, not because the building gets bigger, but because the zoning lot gets smaller. And so the zoning stays the same. The community facility portion stays the same. The residential portion even essentially stays the same, the difference being that it's just 2 floors less.
I see, and the building, the footprint is the same, except that you've lost a few lots of a few of those residential lots.
Yeah, exactly. So as you can see on this one here, you can see on the left, you can see where the actual building footprint is. That was the same building footprint that was here, that we were here with a couple of years ago. The difference is that all the part in yellow on the right was included previously. Those lots, residential lots, they had about 65% lot coverage. So the average for the zoning lot itself was about 80%. And now because all of those are taken out, 100%.
What happened to those lots?
So for business reasons, it just became impractical to be able to move over the floor area. It would have caused just too many complications in doing it and being able to get the community facility building in place. It was just not feasible. I think everyone, especially from the congregation side, would have liked it to be the case because those additional 2 floors of residential floor area would have helped subsidize the cost of construction for the synagogue. But it just, on the business side, it fell apart.
So you were purchasing those lots?
We were going to, the plan was to purchase the excess floor area from those lots.
Okay, I see, I see.
So it was an air rights transfer.
Yes, that was the plan.
Okay.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on this, or does someone have something they want to raise? I make a motion to approve.
Second that motion.
I second.
Okay, Jerry, can we have a roll call?
Del Teague,
Yes.
Stephen Chesler,
Yes.
Erin Drinkwater. Erin Drinkwater.
Yes.
Moishe Indig. I can hear you, yes. Moishe Indig. Bozina Kamitsky. Abraham Leibovitz. Sante Maselli. Rabbi Niederman.
Rabbi, are you there?
Isaac Sophus. Robert Solano. Rob Solano.
Yes, I vote yes.
Stephen Weidberg. Steve Weidberg. William Vega.
Yes.
Michael Andrews.
Yes.
Keith Berger.
Yes.
Corey Canton.
Yes.
Michael Kowachka.
Yes.
Kate Napoli-Karski.
Yes.
Allison Stone.
Yes.
11 yes, 0 no, 0 abstentions.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, third application. And this is Elevate Transit zoning for accessibility. And I think Alexandra Patty Diaz is going to present.
Yes. Good afternoon, Land Use Committee and members of the Community Board. I'm Alexandra Pati Diaz. I'm from the Department of City Planning, and I'm here with Shuejin, also part of the Brooklyn office, as well as Andy from the MTA, and we're here to present to you the zoning for accessibility. I will need to share my screen. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Can I get a confirmation? You are looking at my screen and you're looking at the presentation?
Yes, we're looking at the zoning accessibility.
Great. Thank you very much. This is the first of a series of city tax amendments the Department of City Planning is sponsoring throughout the spring summer. In this case, this project, our partner is the Metropolitan Transportation Authority and the Mayor's Office for People and Disabilities. For the first portion of this presentation, I'm going to pass it to our colleague, Andy.
Great, thank you. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. So good evening, everyone. As Alexandra said, my name is Andy Inglesby. I am Assistant Director for Government and Community Relations for MTA, New York City Transit. We're going to be giving a presentation that's very similar to the presentation we gave on May 11th at the full board. We're pleased to be at the Land Use Committee meeting this evening. The MTA and DCP are proposing a citywide zoning text amendment that will allow the MTA to work more efficiently with private developers to help achieve system-wide accessibility much more quickly. There's two parts to this proposal. The first one is a system-wide transit easement requirement, and the second one is an expanded transit improvement bonus in high-density areas. Alexandra is going to talk a little bit about those, both of those points when I turn it over to her. Next slide, please. So as our ridership is aware, our stations are old, and we really did not plan for vertical accessibility when they were built. Currently, there's 136 out of 493 subway and Staten Island Railroad stations that are accessible. And that breaks down to 132 out of 472 subway stations and 4 out of the 21 Staten Island Railroad stations. And as far as ADA accessible stations are concerned, the actual ADA accessible stations include many features to make the stations readily accessible to and usable by individuals with disabilities. But the zoning for accessibility, as you'll see, focuses on vertical accessibility only. Slide, please. The next slide is really just to show you subsets, obvious subsets of the people that would really benefit from accessibility, added accessibility in our stations. Obviously, people with disabilities, seniors, parents with people with temporary injuries, really just people who just, are tired after a long day at school or at work and they just want to get on an elevator. So, we understand that we have a lot of work to do with accessibility, and as you can see, zoning accessibility really would help us with that endeavor. Slide, please. So to put an even finer point on the populations that would use the elevators, there's 550,000 residents with an ambulatory disability that are New York City residents, 500,000 children under 5, and there's 1.2 million residents that are 65 and over. And a real alarming statistic that we found that from 2005 to 2015, the New York City population grew over 65 grew by 19.2%, while the overall population grew by 7.5%. So the population over 65 was more than double of what the rest of the population was in New York City. Next, please. So, and that is really why the MTA has made a historic commitment to accessibility in our latest capital plan. We have more than $5 billion dedicated to making 77 stations accessible. That's subway stations, Long Island Railroad, and Metro North stations. And as you guys are aware, within CB1, 3 of the first 8 subway stations that we're doing in the 2020 to 24 capital program are within CB1. The Lorimer Street L station, Metropolitan Avenue G station, and the Grant Street L station are all within the first 8 stations that we are looking to do. We've, as you know, we have gone to the Transportation Committee back in April to start talking about those projects, and we're actually going to go back to the Transportation Committee tomorrow night for an update. Next slide, please. And then finally, this last slide that I'm going to present really looks at elevator construction. And the top right image shows an example of how small the clearance is between elevators and our elevated, between buildings and our elevated stations, especially in the outer boroughs. And there's just no room to put an elevator in many cases. And then the other picture there shows that underground utilities need to be completely relocated for us to install an elevator. And often we open up the sidewalk to find other utilities that were not marked, which adds significant additional time and cost to our projects. So that being said, I also just want to stress that zoning for accessibility is a complement to our capital program. It is not a replacement for it. As I just said, regarding Metropolitan Avenue, Lorimer Street, and Grant Street within CB1, those are 3 of the 70 overall stations that are in the 2020 to 24 capital program for us to be made accessible before the current capital program expires. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Alexandra to walk you through the rest of the presentation, and we'll be more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Andy. So today, there are zoning tools in place that help alleviate some of these burdens and support the construction of transit improvements in specific portions of the city. There are 2 transit-related zoning provisions in place today. There are the requirements on station improvements bonuses. These tools leverage station access improvements in places where investments are already occurring, and they ensure that opportunities for coordinating between developments and station improvements are evaluated and realized. More and more, we are getting better on how to design the stations inside and how to better connect with the sidewalks, and because each of the stations are providing a connection between the pedestrian experience and the subway system. However, these existing zoning tools are very limited. Some of the limitations are that this easement provision don't address the challenges of locating new entrances and existing subway stations. An easement is a legal right to use another land for a specific limit purpose. In other words, it is a small permanent space reserved in a building for a transit agency to use in the future. So transit easements have traditionally been used to provide space for new station entrances, passageways, or ancillary facilities that support the subway lines. However, in the zoning resolution today, these provisions have very limited coverage and only apply in a few areas of the city, such as the 2nd Avenue for the 2nd Avenue subway line, and most recently for a special Inwood district. Also, on the zoning resolution, it doesn't currently provide a citywide approach to facilitate transit easements on development sites and transit stations. As a result of these limitations, there have been missed opportunities for the MTA to locate ADA access at optimal locations of development sites next to stations citywide. So together, we have created Zoning for Accessibility, which is a citywide zoning framework that creates more opportunities to increase accessibility in the transit system. How are we doing this? This is the change that we are proposing in the zoning resolution. The first component of this proposal is a system-wide easement requirement that will address some of the limitations explained before. As part of this requirement, in all applicable zoning districts, development and enlargements on zoning lots of at least 5,000 square feet and within 50 feet of mass transit stations will be required to first consult with the MTA and the chair of the City Planning Commission regarding the need of a transit easement. Where, in which zoning districts is this applicable? It is applicable on or in the following the following districts. First, residential districts, all of them above R5 and R5D. Commercial districts, all districts with a residential equivalent at or above R5, as well as C7 and C8 districts, and in all manufacturing districts. So when we're talking about transit easement, what is what we're trying to facilitate? Because and why it's the need to ask for the MTA and the city planning and the chair of the city planning commission, because each easement can have a different shape, a different size, or it can be a different type. For example, if there is an elevated structure of the train that it's needed to be reached, an easement can take multiple floors within the development. Or in terms of size, it can differ based if it needs vertical circulation or not. And in terms of type, easements may be used to accommodate also other station needs. So the review process will check those. In order to facilitate the easement agreements in the future, targeted relief for certain zoning limits will be provided to minimize the potential challenges for construction on a site subject to the proposed requirement. These easements can affect the development sites in a number of ways. For example, the easement itself can take up a floor space on a site and can reduce the available floor area for the development itself. The shape and size of the easement can also occupy a large amount of space within the development building. The easement can also restrict available space to provide ground floor uses and parking spaces, or even the entrances. And depending on the type of development, may create compatibility issues with more sensitive uses such as apartment units and other residential uses. So without zoning reliefs, easements can limit the construction of developments to its full potential, and in certain situations can result in buildings that lack any relationship with the future use of that easement. So if the provision of an easement makes it challenging for the development to be built, it will be much more difficult for the transit agency to acquire the easement. So in a higher level, what are these zoning reliefs that are being incorporated in the proposal? Excludes easements from zoning floor area and allows it as permitted obstruction. It increases the lot coverage in certain districts. It increases the maximum permitted height by 10 or 20 feet, depending on the zoning district, and provides a street wall flexibility around the easement. It deducts 15 parking spaces and waives all requirements on small sites, allows temporary uses within the easement and retail uses within 30 feet of the easement and in the rear yard where such use are provided on the second story. And it exempts easements from streetscape requirements and restrict curb cuts within 30 feet of the easement. Additionally, the relief will be provided also to address unique site constraints and provide greater design flexibility to facilitate the provision of the easement. So as you may as I know of how well versed you are with our zoning resolution and mechanisms, as part of this text amendment, which we have also introduced an authorization and a special permit that will allow, if asked, for additional bulk modifications or height increases based on the easement provision. Here is an overview of City 1 boundary and area, in which are all the subway stations that qualify for the easement only provision. And we can see on the zoom on the right down corner, but for example, for the Morgan Station Avenue, 50 feet, how does it look like 50 feet around the subway station? All the lots that if they're going to get either developed or enlarged, they will have to ask to the MTA and the chair of CPC if they need to provide the easement for that station. Andy, would you like to add any other explanation on this map? No? Okay. This is summary. As we said before, the proposal has two parts. The first part is the one that I explained, which is the system-wide easement requirement. And the second part is an expanded bonus program. This bonus program is only applicable on developments in R9 and R10 density level districts, which do not exist currently exceeding 1, and that's why we didn't explain it further in this presentation. However, you can find it in the appendix as this file. It's in possession of the community board, and what it does is it gives 20% of floor bonus area for developments in these districts to provide on and off-site station improvements. So where are we? This application was referred to all community boards of the city back in April. We are almost at the end of the public review and comment period. And what we need and what is being asked for you, since this is a referral of a zoning text amendment, you can either submit a letter of approval or with your comments, and they will be duly explained and shown to the City Planning Commission and to the other parties before its adoption. And we really care about your comments and your feedback on this proposal. We highly encourage you to, regardless that is a zoning text amendment, if you have comments, to provide them through this comment period. And that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions. And if it helps to unshare my screen, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question, Del. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I actually have two questions. One is, so there's a scenario where an easement the MTA wants to create an easement in an existing building. Is that a potential scenario? And if so, then are they? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, can an easement be forced upon a property owner with an existing building, say one of these old, Italianate, 5-story buildings on a corner? And I'll just ask that first, and I have a different question after that.
To my understanding, this is applicable for either new developments or enlargements or modifications of existing buildings. If the building is going through a modification, it is my understanding to check for the easement will be required. Amy, do you have any other specifications which conditions will be applicable?
Yeah, so this is only, you're right, this is only applicable in new construction and enlargements. So if an existing building wants to enlarge their building at all, their floor area, they would need to come in for this easement certification. But if it's an existing building, then there isn't a mechanism right now for us to like ask for an easement.
Mhm.
Okay. Great, thanks. And then I think there was an option or a scenario where a developer could get a 25% density bonus by, building. And if that's the case, is that or any of the other, what would you call them, adjustments to the zoning, whether it's, open space, yard, or parking, et cetera, are those subject through like an ULURP or a quasi ULURP process where they would have to get, a special permit or text amendment or special permit to take advantage of that provision in this proposed text amendment?
So for the density bonus, which is only part of the bonus program, it's only applicable in R9 and R10 density districts. For the rest and for the authorization and the special permit, if these are asked, this type of land use actions require a ULURP process instead of just a certification of the chair. So
I'm sorry, what does it require?
So the certification of the chair will check for the zoning relief if the easement is provided. The ones that right now are in summary in this slide. If the development needs further reliefs, such because of the uniqueness of the site, it needs greater design flexibility, then they have other tools, not the certification, but the authorization or the special permit. And those two, to ask for authorization of the special permit, it requires a ULURP review.
Thank you.
Dell, I have a question that I know that it's not, what I'm asking is not about the easement. Has there ever been a case where the MTA and city planning have worked out as a mitigation for a developer to be asked to donate to kind of like a bonus area when they're out, they're not, where it's not adjacent to the station, but that where they're in the area and they know that the density that they're being they're asking for is going to cause just trouble with just that many more people commuting. Have developers ever been asked to donate to? Is there a mechanism for asking developers to donate to the MTA to help with the stations?
In this case, I will refer to Andy, but specifically for this application, for this citywide tax amendment and the easement program, I don't think that's the case. But I believe that is the case for a portion of the city. But Andy, do you have more information?
Yeah, hi. We've certainly worked with our outside projects unit has certainly worked with many developers in the past regarding, anytime a developer does anything that within 200 feet of a transit facility, whether it be a subway station, a bus stop, a substation, or any kind of structure, they need to go to our outside projects unit. And in the past, our outside projects unit have certainly worked with developers to, either ask them if they could, make construct an elevator as part of their project. I don't have any specifics at my fingertips, but we can certainly see if we can give you some examples.
But is it always just within 200 feet? Do you ever go in the community itself?
as is, I don't know of any examples off the top of my head for that, but I'll see if I'll try to do a little research to see if there are any for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a very good question. So any comments about any more comments about this? If not, I'll ask for a vote to approve. The vote would be to recommend that the community board send a letter approving. So Jerry, does anyone, so I make a motion to recommend that the community board sends a letter of approval by June 14th. Does anyone second?
I'll second it, Steve Chesler.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, roll call, please.
Delty,
Yes.
Steve Chesler,
Yes.
Aaron Drinkwater. Aaron Drinkwater.
Yes.
Moishe Indig. Rosina Kaminsky. Abraham Leibovitz. Sante Mastelli. Rabbi Niederman.
Yes, and I want to tell you I've been screaming for my lungs before, but you didn't hear me the vote before. It was on my phone and it didn't work.
Isaac Sofer. Fred Solano.
Yes.
Stephen Weidberg. Stephen Weidberg. William Vega.
Yes.
Michael Andrews.
Yes.
Keith Berger.
Yes.
Corey Canton. Michael Kowachka.
Yes.
Kate Naplatarski.
Yes.
Allison Stone. Allison Stone. No vote. No. 11 in the affirmative.
Jenny, please mark me yes on the previous one.
It's so noted,
We
Rabbi.
did. I think we did, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Last application is 101 Varick Avenue.
Yes.
Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So if you can hear me all right, I'll start.
Yes.
Great. Hello, my name is Dora Blakesley, and I work for DOT Facilities Management. Thank you to Community Board 1 for allowing us to come and present tonight about our proposed project at 101 Varick Avenue. Not sure why the screen isn't moving. Oh, there it is. Okay. There's just a delay. As for the agenda for this presentation, first I will introduce the project site and the DOT programs that we are proposing to locate there. Then I will provide you some background information about what is motivating the need for this new space, which is the expansion and relocation of 2 DOT units. Then I will present a description of the surrounding area, the project site, and the proposed project. And finally, I will discuss the findings of the fair share analysis and seeker EIS that were performed. And then we can take any questions. So here's a picture of the project site, 101 Varick, outlined in red. DOT, in collaboration with DCAS, is seeking to site select and acquire this privately owned site. It is located at the corner of Varick Avenue and Johnson Avenue in East Williamsburg. The site lot is approximately 141,800 square feet. It has a one-story warehouse building attached to a three-story office structure with surface parking on both sides. The site is located in an M31 zoning district in the North Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone. And the DOT units that are proposed to be located at this facility include part of the Sidewalk Inspection and Management, abbreviated as SIM, Citywide Concrete Unit, and the Traffic Operations Streetlight Storage Warehouse, as well as office space. And currently, the Streetlight Warehouse is operating out of 101 Varick under a license agreement. The next slide shows some pictures of the site from a few different angles. The diagram in the lower right corner shows the angles that the pictures were taken from. Picture 1 is the view from Varick Avenue. Picture 2 is taken at the corner of Johnson and Varick Avenues. And picture 3 is the view of the building taken from Johnson Avenue. And the next slide shows a few more pictures. Picture 4 is a direct picture of the building from Johnson Avenue. Picture 5 shows the entrance to the larger parking lot from Johnson Avenue. And picture 6 was taken from further down Johnson Avenue, looking back towards 101 Varick, and you can see the building next door in the picture. So to provide some background that explains why DOT needs new space at 101 Varick, there are 2 DOT units that have been affected recently by important city priorities. First, the Sidewalk Inspection and Management Citywide Concrete Unit is a vital DOT operation that is crucial for the safe movement of pedestrians throughout New York City. This unit is responsible for sidewalk repairs and pedestrian ramp, traffic median, and pedestrian safety island installations throughout the 5 boroughs. This unit is expanding due to a court mandate that requires the installation of new curb ramps and upgrading existing curb ramps to current ADA standards. This affects 162,000 street corners all throughout the city, and DOT is in the process of hiring 440 new staff members to implement these improvements. And 20 of these employees would be assigned to 101 Varick. These new employees can't be located at current SIM locations because these locations are already over capacity. The second DOT unit that has been recently affected by a city priority project is the Traffic Operations Streetlight Warehouse. This warehouse was previously located at 37th Avenue in Queens, but the pathway for the construction of DEP's Water Tunnel number 3 actually came right under this site, and DEP needed the site to build an access shaft to connect with the water tunnel. So DOT had to relinquish the site at 37th Avenue to DEP, and this necessitated relocating DOT's street lighting warehouse operation. And the warehouse is currently operating out of 101 Varick under a license agreement. And this operation is supported by 6 DOT traffic operations staff. This next slide shows a figure describing the area surrounding the project site. 101 Varick is outlined in black in the middle, and the dashed line shows the study area, which extended to a distance of 600 feet from 101 Varick in all directions. 101 Varick is located in East Williamsburg in the North Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone, and it is adjacent to a significant maritime and industrial area. Land uses within the 600-foot study area are primarily transportation and utility, industrial, and manufacturing. There are a substantial number of 1 to 4-story manufacturing warehouses, varying in size and containing storage and distribution uses, as well as art and film studios. Varick has been identified by DOT as a very good location for their SIM citywide concrete and streetlight warehouse operations for many different reasons. The site is well served by public transit. It's only 0.3 miles from the L train, and there are several bus lines nearby. And employees will be encouraged to take public transportation. Also, there is access to Metropolitan and Flushing Avenues, as well as the BQE, which is very important as operations of the site will be providing services to all boroughs. The existing building and site is adequately sized for DOT and will require minimal changes. It has a large drive-through and vehicle-accessible ground floor that is really important for equipment storage and loading. This site is located in an M31 zoning district, which typically includes uses such as power plants, solid waste transfer and recycling facilities, and fuel supply depots. and DOT's proposed uses for the site fit within the M31 zoning, as they would include light industrial and warehouse activities. As previously stated, the site is located in the North Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone, which is an economic development zone designation directed at fostering industrial and manufacturing businesses. The site is also designated as a core industrial area in the North Brooklyn Industry and Innovation Plan, which is aimed at retaining land for critical industrial uses. As for community benefits, the proposed project would provide for the occupancy of this building with new employment and would foster economic activity in the area, with employees visiting local businesses and restaurants. This slide shows the proposed site plan for 101 Varick. The red line outlines the whole site, with the black line outlining the building footprint, which includes a large internal warehouse and 3-story office structure. As I've already mentioned, 2 DOT operations are located there, SIM Citywide Concrete and the Traffic Operations Streetlight Warehouse. And the Streetlight Warehouse is already currently operating out of 101 Varick under a license agreement. The warehouse is used to store hundreds of street lamp posts, post bases, lamp bases and heads, anchor bolts, steel base plates, and other materials. And SIM Citywide Concrete would also use the warehouse area for their operations. The first floor of the 3-story office space will be used to support SIM with locker rooms, showers, muster areas, and general office support. Floors 2 and 3 will be used as office space for DOT programming. Outside the building, there are 2 surface parking lots. The west lot is approximately 53,000 square feet and would be used both by Streetlight Warehouse and SIM Citywide Concrete. The east lot is approximately 12,000 square feet and would be used by SIM Citywide Concrete. Please note that SIM will not be storing concrete materials or preparing concrete on site. An advantage of this site is that it requires only minimal interior improvements to meet DOT occupancy requirements, and no new construction on site is proposed. As for flood resiliency, 101 Varick is located in the 0.2% annual chance of occurrence coastal flood hazard area, which is primarily the surface parking area. To address the risk of flooding associated with major storms and sea level rise, all hazardous materials stored on site and critical infrastructure and systems within the building would be sited in space above the design flood elevation, or they will be flood protected or be transportable to an off-site location in advance of a potential flooding event. Sustainability is also very important to DOT, and it's a priority for the city. So DOT, in partnership with DCAS, will be exploring the opportunity to incorporate energy efficiency into the building retrofit, and we'll look into the possibility of installing rooftop solar panels. A fair share analysis was performed for the site to determine whether there are a disproportionate number of city facilities in this area that perform a similar function. This figure shows the city facilities within 1/2 mile of the proposed facility. The DSNY facilities are the red dots labeled 1 to 3B. There are 4 of them. And the DEP facility is the red dot labeled 4. There's 1 DEP facility. The DSNY facilities are garages, a salt shed, and a parking lot. And the DEP facility is a garage/storage facility. There are a few concrete batching plants in the surrounding area, but they are very different from the proposed facility at 101 Varick. They are very large volume concrete plants with concrete materials and mixing occurring on site. As stated previously, DOT will not be storing concrete materials or preparing concrete at 101 Varick. There's only one other DOT facility that is within 1/2 mile of 101 Varick. This is the Metropolitan Avenue Bridge, and it is not similar in nature to the DOT facility that is being proposed for 101 Varick. Based on this analysis, it was determined that there was not a disproportionate concentration of similar city facilities in the study area. The purple shading shows that 101 Varick is located within the North Brooklyn Industrial Business Zone, and the proposed operations are compatible with existing facilities and zoning in the surrounding area. The need for the proposed project by DOT was stated in the 2020-2021 Citywide Statement of Needs. This project also underwent a city environmental quality review, and an environmental assessment statement was created, which analyzed the project and any potential environmental impacts. It was determined that the project would not create any significant adverse impacts related to the hazardous materials or contamination. The site and building will be getting minimal updates, which would not disturb the ground. Also, it was determined that the vehicle trips generated by the proposed project and on-site operations do not exceed the secret technical manual threshold of 50 peak hour vehicle trips. So the proposed project is not expected to result in any significant adverse traffic impacts. The analysis also concluded that the project is not expected to result in any significant adverse parking impacts, considering the proximity of the site to public transportation. And a negative declaration was issued on April 1st, 2021, stating that the proposed project would not have a significant adverse impact on the environment. So in summary, DOT is seeking the site selection to acquire the property at 101 Varick to house an expanded SIM-CUI concrete unit and relocated street lighting warehouse. The project site is ideal for DOT for many reasons. It's located close to public transportation. It has excellent vehicle access to the city's highway system. It has both industrial and office space that is adequately sized. It's appropriately zoned for DOT operations. It requires minimal improvements, and it could potentially increase economic activity for local businesses. A fair share analysis determined that there are no disproportionate concentration of similar city or DOT facilities in the area, and a secret EAS determined that the project would not create significant traffic, parking, or environmental impacts. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening, and we will take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. So any questions from the committee members?
Quick.
Yes,
Go ahead. Go for it.
Steve?
Thank you. You had a question about the increase in truck traffic. Like how many trucks will be stored on site, and generally what type of trucks, like semis or tandem box trucks? And just in terms of flow, like approximately the volume, at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, is there, is it 24/7 operation? Just will there be flow of trucks in and out at particular times?
Case or Bob, do you want to jump in? And I can look up the truck numbers in my, on my desktop, but I don't know if you have the numbers on hand.
This is Case. I don't have the truck quantities, but the types are pickup trucks, vans, Mack trucks, dump trucks, trucks with trailers, but no semis, no like long haul trailers, anything like that. And the typical frequency is they report to the site in the morning. They're given their job site. They're deployed.
I'm looking up the truck numbers here.
What about concrete mixing trucks? Even though you're not mixing concrete there, would you actually store those types of trucks and they would move in and out of the site?
The numbers I have for trucks here are 8 pickup trucks, 8 dump trucks, 5 rack trucks. So there'll be 21 trucks in total. But I think the dump trucks are what would be storing the any concrete that's being distributed. That's what our Case. Do you know the actual?
Hello?
Hey, Bob.
Robert, Bob, go ahead.
Hey, sorry. The that we developed for the EAS with the input and review city DOT were 6, 12, and 3 incremental vehicle trips or passenger equivalent trips during the AM, midday, and PM peak hours. So the facility doesn't have a lot of vehicle trips. There's not going to be a lot of vehicles at the site, and they're going to be distributed the course of the workday. So when we look at this, we look at the full day, the workday, and we also look at the peak trips. So the peak trips were pretty small, and it didn't require a traffic analysis because we were below the seeker technical manual requirements for a detailed traffic study.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This
Just
is
had
Katie.
a additional comment on focusing on the nightlife that's around this site. There's a pretty big event space called Avenue Garner around the corner, which I think has the capacity of 7,000 people, and elsewhere, which is a block and a half away, which has another capacity of probably 3,000. So at any given time, you're going to be dealing with non-IBDC regular folk leaving these venues at anywhere between 8 to 9,000 at a time. Have you addressed that with your team, and that this is just not your typical IBZs that you can whip the truck out and not be aware of these crowds coming? And do you have a game plan for that? I did not see it in your anywhere in your presentation. So one, if you could speak to that, and two, I think it could be helpful in your next stages at borough president and city council and city planning to add that to just, it seemed like you are aware that that's happening and you have a game plan to ensure that there's no accidents with that and things like that. Just if you can speak to that.
Bob, did your team take a look at the crowd's potential?
Yeah, I'm assuming that, and we can look into it further, but that the operations of that facility are different from the operation of the DOT facility. The hours will be different. We'll certainly take that into consideration, and that's a large volume of people. But I think that the operational characteristics will be different than the proposed DOT facility.
How is it that would be different? Could you be more specific?
The time periods of operation will be different. I think we're 7:30 to 3:30, 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 Monday through Friday. And I will look more into what the operational characteristics are of this event space, but I'm assuming it's different than those hours.
So you're saying that the DOT would be operating from 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m.?
Yeah.
Correct.
So you don't expect that they would be interacting with the people going to these venues?
Correct. Yeah, there wouldn't be a cross traffic issue.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but they have 7-day a week, 8 a.m. to 4 a.m. liquor licenses in Abner Gardner. It is not your traditional like 1990 venues where they open at 10 and close at 4. They run full-fledged daytime parties from 8 a.m. to 4 a.m. Really think you should go get updated on nightlife. It's a little different now than maybe when you went out. It's definitely a different energy. It's thousands of people where you're doing a normal work day. There's thousands of people partying a block away from you guys. Yeah, I would definitely connect with those.
Maybe not so much nightlife, I guess.
It's a different world. Yeah.
Can you repeat the name of the space for me, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called Avner Gardner Mirage. If you did like a Google map when you guys were doing it, it's literally.
Gardner.
I'm
Rob,
sorry.
it's
Yeah.
Avant Gardner.
Thank you, Marie, with my
Actually,
accent.
it's 2.5 blocks away, and it's not on Varick and Johnson.
It's around the corner. It's a long block. It's a long block, but it's around the corner.
I'm assuming they have online information. We'll look it up and see what their operational characteristics are.
Go for it. Thank you.
Include it in the presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I presume that we would include this in any motion that we make. So any other questions? Can you have a green roof? And how strongly committed are you to solar panels?
Good question. Jessica, I don't know about a green roof. Did you?
I think it's not determined yet. I think we were looking at potentially a green roof or potentially solar panels, but it's not we're open and interested in either or both, but neither has been determined yet.
This is Scott Bernstein from DCAS. I'll add to that. I mean, this is really at the discretion of the landlord. It's not like this building was built after the new codes that came into effect on green roofs. So it's not our building. We're just leasing it on behalf of DOT. It's not something that the city would invest money probably to improve on the building. It really is up to the landlord to do the right thing. We can have those discussions, but it's not something the city would actually pay for.
No, but Scott, not on the green roof, but on the solar roof, we generally work with a different part of DCAS to make that happen.
Yes, there is energy things in the works, and so yes, there are things. I just didn't want to commit to anything on that based on a lease site, but yes, there are other funds, and the city is looking at those type of things for energy improvements that would not actually go into a lease. So this would be a consideration.
Does anyone have suggestions for a vote?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Get that motion.
Just to suggest they take consideration of these two large nightlife venues / daylight venues. Yeah, green roofs. But I mean.
I second.
Jerry, roll call, please.
Del Teague,
Yes.
Stephen Chesler,
Yes.
Erin Drinkwater,
Yes.
Moisha
Yes.
Indig, Ozina Kaminsky,
Yes.
Abraham Leibovitz, Sante Maselli, Rabbi Niederman, Isaac Sofer, Robert Solano,
Yes.
Stephen Weidberg,
Yes.
William Vega,
Yes.
Michael Andrews,
Yes.
Keith Berger,
Yes.
Corey Canton,
Yes.
Michael Kowachka,
Yes.
Kate Naplatarski,
Yes.
Allison Stone,
Yes.
13 in the affirmative.
Okay, thank you. This is the sum total of our applications tonight. As you all know, we have a very busy schedule ahead of us. June 28th, we have another meeting, and in July, it looks like we're going to have a public hearing and yet another land use committee meeting. So looks like the city has decided to certify as many applications as they can get through in this current administration. I wish I could tell you there was something we could do to slow it up, but I'm not aware of anything that we can do about that. So I just thank you all for your dedication, and I don't know, take a lot of naps between now and then. I don't know what to say. I don't know. What can I
It's
tell
weird.
you?
When 4 items and we're done before 9, if there's something wrong, I don't know what happened.
Sorry, as
I
a
don't
member of
know.
the public, can I just make a comment on what you just said, Ms. Teague?
Yes.
I'm actually very concerned about the fact that there are so many applications that are being certified and sent through to before this administration is over. And I just want to voice my opposition to that. I don't think that these applications are getting an adequate review at DCP. And I also think that that basically puts the board in a position to not be able to make a determination on them. Excuse me, sorry, not to be able to make a determination on them with full information about, their impact on this community. So I am very opposed to all of these applications being pushed through, and I would ask the board to do anything it can to make sure that these applications are getting a thorough review and all the information available to you is actually going to be available to you before you advance any of them. Thank you.
Thank you. We will do our best. We'll get whatever information we can. So, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Del.